Hello, my name is Delina. You ever wonder what it feels like to watch your own family rewrite your story? One quiet erasure at a time? It started with a laptop, sinking to the bottom of a pool. My brother smiled as it disappeared beneath the water because I refused to pay his $16,000 debt. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was realizing my mother called it an accident. That my name vanished from my father's will like I'd never existed. That behind every "we love you," there was a whisper, "Stay small." So I ask you, what do you do when the people who raised you are the same ones who try to erase you? I'd been putting it off all week. Every time Carlin's name lit up my phone screen, I let it go to voicemail. I told myself I was busy, that I'd call him back later, but the truth was simpler. I knew what he wanted. I could feel it like a weight pressing down on my chest. Sunday morning arrived like most others in Tempe, dry heat rising early, the sun already high by mid-morning. I was on my patio, trying to salvage a slow, quiet day before the week stole it from me. My iced coffee sat on the table, condensation sliding down the glass, and my laptop, my lifeline, was open beside me, waiting for edits on a client's wireframe. I was mid-keystroke when I heard the side gate creak open. I didn't need to look up. That slow, smug rhythm of footsteps on my stone pavers had belonged to Carlin since we were kids. "Hope I'm not catching you at a bad time," he called out, already rounding the corner with that trademark grin that made strangers think he was charming. They didn't know him like I did. "Carlin," I said, measured. "Didn't know you were in the neighborhood. I figured I'd swing by. You've been hard to reach." I gestured to the chair across from me. "Been busy?" "Yeah, I can tell." He pointed toward my laptop, already scoping the space like he owned it. "Must be nice working from home. Flexible hours, sunny patio. You're doing good for yourself." It wasn't a compliment. It was a setup. We danced around small talk for maybe 10 minutes. Weather, some vague updates about Mom, a half-hearted joke about politics, and then he leaned forward, elbows on knees. "Look, I won't beat around the bush," he said, exhaling through his nose like he was gearing up for something noble. "I need a loan." There it was. "How much?" I asked flatly. 16,000. I blinked, not because the number shocked me, but because he said it like he was asking for a ride to the airport. "For what?" "Some stuff caught up with me," he said, avoiding eye contact. "Card debt, a couple of things from the business. It's temporary, Del, just until I get back on my feet." "You said that last time," I reminded him. "That was different." "No, it wasn't. You said it would be 6 months tops. You never paid me back." His face tensed, just a twitch around the jaw, but he forced a smile. "It's not like you need the money right now." There it was again, that entitlement, that casual dismissal of my work, my hustle, my choices. I stared at him for a long moment, then said what I'd been practicing in my head for weeks. "I'm not giving you any more money." Silence stretched between us like a rope being pulled tight. "Excuse me?" I said, "No, Carlin. I can't keep fixing your messes. I won't." He laughed, like I'd told a joke. "You're serious?" "I'm done enabling you." He stood, too quickly, knocking the table slightly. My coffee sloshed. He turned toward the pool, hands on his hips. "I drove all the way here, and you won't even help your own brother. 16 grand is pocket change to you, Delina." "That's not the point. It's my pocket." He turned back toward me, and his eyes, for a moment, were stone cold. Then they shifted to something more amused. "Well," he said, voice syrupy smooth, "I guess you won't need that laptop anymore." Before I could react, he stepped forward, bumped the edge of the table with his knee, deliberate, precise, and in one smooth motion, the laptop slid off and tumbled into the pool with a quiet splash. Time slowed. The only sound was the soft bubbling as my lifeline sank into chlorinated silence. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. Carlin smiled. That awful, satisfied smile. "Whoops," he said. "Should have put that thing somewhere safer." Then he turned and walked away, humming under his breath like he had just cleaned the gutters or mowed the lawn. I didn't move. Couldn't. That laptop held client projects, portfolios, invoices, everything. I had backups, of course, but not everything was current. Some of it would be lost forever. But it wasn't the laptop, it was the message. This wasn't a tantrum. This wasn't a sibling squabble. This was punishment for daring to say no, for stepping outside the role he'd assigned me years ago, the fixer, the wallet, the quiet sister who never fought back. I stared at the last ripple on the water's surface, then turned away. I wouldn't cry, not for him, not this time. I walked back into the house, not even bothering to close the patio door behind me. Inside, the air was still cool from the AC, but I was burning. I poured the rest of my coffee down the sink, hands trembling just slightly. I sat at my kitchen counter, breathing slow, controlled breaths, no calls to make, no texts to send. I just sat. And as the sun reached its peak, I made a promise to myself. This wouldn't end like the last time. He wouldn't win. Not again. I didn't know how long I stood there, staring at the place where my laptop had vanished beneath the shimmering water. The patio was silent now, only the sound of the filter humming in the background. I finally turned away, not out of peace, but because staying still had become unbearable. I walked into the house, each step slow, deliberate. I grabbed a towel, wrapped it around the dripping wreck that had once held months of my work, and sat down at the edge of the sofa. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I wasn't ready to talk to anyone, but when I saw the name, Mom, my thumb moved before my mind could stop it. "Hello?" I said, voice low. Her tone was clipped. "I just got off the phone with Carlin. He said there was an incident?" I didn't respond immediately. I wanted to measure my words. "He pushed my laptop into the pool, Mom." There was a pause. A beat too long. "Well, he said it was an accident." I blinked. "It wasn't." "Honey," she sighed, dragging the word like she was exhausted by me. "You've been so tense lately. Maybe you're reading too much into it." "Mom," he looked me in the eye and said, "Whoops," before it even hit the water. She laughed. Not a joyful laugh, but one of disbelief. "It's just a laptop, sweetheart. Let's not blow this out of proportion." Something inside me snapped. Not a scream, not a sob, just a silent tear between what I hoped she'd be and what she was. "You know he owes me money," I said. "You know this isn't the first time." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "Your brother's had a rough time. You've always been the strong one. He's trying." That line. The same one since we were kids. He's trying. And I guess I was just supposed to keep being the strong one, silently absorbing the damage he left behind. "I'm tired of being the one who fixes everything," I said quietly. There was no response for several seconds. Then, "I think you should cool off a little before saying things you'll regret." "I'm not the one who should be regretting anything." "I'm hanging up now, Delina," she snapped. "We'll talk later." And she did. Hang up, that is, not talk. I sat there, the phone still pressed to my ear long after the line went dead. The quiet in the room was louder than anything she could have said. By mid-afternoon, the heat outside had peaked. The patio was flooded with light, but inside my apartment, it was dim and heavy. I couldn't just sit there any longer. I grabbed my keys, the laptop wrapped in the towel, and drove. 30 minutes down to Chandler felt longer than usual. The freeway stretched under a pale sky, my thoughts looping like a scratched CD, over and over, the same refrain. It was just a laptop. By the time I pulled up to my mother's house, my stomach had twisted itself into a hard knot. The house was familiar, but it didn't feel like home, not anymore. I rang the bell. She answered faster than I expected. Her smile faltered when she saw me. "Oh," she said. "I didn't think you'd come." "I want to talk," I said simply. "Carlin's inside," she added, like that should matter to me. I stepped in anyway. The air smelled like lemon cleaner and something burnt, probably from the oven. Carlin was sprawled on the living room couch, phone in hand, looking far too comfortable. He didn't look up, just said, "Hey, sis." I didn't answer. My mother hovered in the entryway, hands wringing. Would you like some water? No, I said. I want to see the will. That got Carlin's attention. What? He said, eyebrows rising. You heard me, I said. I know Dad wanted to leave me the lake house. I overheard you and Mom talking about it a few months back. Isolde froze. Then her eyes darted toward Carlin. He stood, slowly. You're really digging into that now? Yes, I said. Right now. Mom let out a breath and walked toward the office. The drawer made a soft thud as she opened it. She returned holding a thin folder and handed it to me. We made some changes, she said. Your father, he meant well, but after he passed, we had to be practical. I opened it. My name, missing. Just like that. Where once there had been space for me, there was now a blank line. Carlin needs the house more, she added, as if that explained everything. I stared at the paper. It wasn't just ink and signatures. It was a quiet erasure of who I had been in this family. My place, crossed out behind closed doors. You didn't think to tell me? I asked, voice low. We didn't want to hurt you, she said. Too late. Carlin chuckled, sitting back down. This is what you're upset about, a piece of property? You're better than this, Dell. You took my name off without asking. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. I thought you'd grown out of being dramatic. I looked at Mom. Did Dad agree to this? Her mouth opened, then closed. He didn't leave instructions. We did what we thought was best. No, you did what was easy. I folded the paper slowly and placed it back in the folder. Thank you for showing me, I said. My tone was calm. Too calm. Carlin smirked and went back to his phone. I walked to the front door, my mother trailing behind me. Delina, please don't let this ruin. It didn't ruin anything, I interrupted. There wasn't anything left to ruin. The door shut behind me with a soft click. In the car, I sat for a moment, hands gripping the wheel. I wasn't erased by accident. I was erased because I didn't play my part anymore, because I said no, because I stopped bending, and they couldn't handle it. I didn't leave the car for a while after returning from Mom's house. I sat in the garage, engine off, listening to the tick-tick of the cooling hood. Yes, I could have gone inside, collapsed on the couch, turned on some meaningless TV just to numb the edge, but something held me there. Maybe it was the silence, or maybe it was the sudden clarity that things would never go back. By the time I finally made it inside, the Arizona heat had followed me in. The air conditioner hummed, but it couldn't reach the places inside me that had overheated. I placed my fried laptop on the kitchen counter, unwrapped the damp towel, and looked at it like it was a body I hadn't buried yet. 2 days passed. I didn't hear from Mom. No texts, no follow-ups. Carlin, of course, hadn't even pretended to care. But I had work to do. Client deliverables, freelance proposals, invoices, all of which were inaccessible since my backups were stored online. So, that Thursday morning, I got up early. The sky was still a dark wash of purple and blue as I padded into the living room with a cup of stale coffee. My laptop was dead, but I had a spare, a basic model I kept for travel. I powered it up, fingers moving automatically. I opened my browser, logged into my Google Drive, expecting at least the last week's worth of files. Empty. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My heart thudded, but I refreshed the page, checked my Wi-Fi, even restarted the browser. Nothing. Folders, gone. Shared files, gone. Portfolio, gone. I clicked into my activity log. That's when I saw it. Accessed at 2:17 a.m., 2 nights prior. Location, Chandler. I stared at that word for a long time. I hadn't been in Chandler at that hour, but someone else had. Someone who lived there. Carlin. My breath caught as I clicked deeper. The login came from a device using my mother's Wi-Fi. It wasn't masked. No VPN. No attempt to hide it. They didn't just take me out of the will. They were trying to erase me entirely. My identity wasn't built around money or property. It was built on my work, my independence, the name I'd carved out for myself in a field where women, especially women who looked like me, weren't always taken seriously, and they'd trashed it like it was just another piece of outdated furniture. I closed the laptop with a quiet click, not trusting myself to stay calm. My hands trembled, but I didn't cry. Not this time. Around noon, my phone rang. I recognized the number. Jason Richards, a creative director I'd worked with twice before. We'd shared laughs, a couple of drinks at a design conference in Denver, and he'd even recommended me for a project last spring. "Hey, Delina," he said, his voice a little too formal. "Got a minute?" "Sure," I said, wary. "I got sent a Reddit thread this morning," he began. Didn't want to believe it, but I figured I'd ask. My stomach turned cold. What did it say? "It's anonymous, but the writer claims you've ghosted on client work, that you blame your family for career stumbles, says you're unstable." I swallowed hard. That's not true. I figured as much, but it's spreading. After we hung up, I searched. The thread was there, on a designer-focused subreddit I used to frequent. A long post, well-written, hitting every weak spot someone like Carlin would know. There were screenshots, edited, of course, DMs that made me look like a flake, comments from fake accounts echoing the same accusations. The tone was familiar. So was the phrasing. My brother had always been articulate. It was one of the reasons people believed him. His lies didn't sound like lies. They sounded like warnings from someone concerned. By nightfall, I'd lost 2 freelance gigs. One contact stopped replying to my emails altogether. A cousin unfollowed me on Instagram. An ex-client I'd mentored years ago sent a message that read simply, "Wow, you fooled us all." I wanted to scream. Instead, I sat on the edge of my bed, letting the dark press in from every corner of the room. My inbox, silent. My phone, still. The world I'd built, fractured. I scrolled through the fake thread again, not because I didn't know what it said, but because I needed to feel the impact. I needed to remember this moment. I took screenshots, saved HTML backups, cataloged every post. If Carlin thought he could erase me by deleting files and poisoning my reputation, he underestimated how I kept records. I always had contracts, conversations, client emails. I archived everything. It wasn't paranoia. It was professionalism. Still, that night, I felt small. I lay on the floor of my living room because my bed felt too warm, too safe, and safety didn't exist anymore. Memories came, not the warm ones, the filtered ones, like the time I won a regional coding competition in high school. But Mom made me skip the award dinner because Carlin had detention and someone needed to stay home with him. Or the job I turned down in Seattle because Mom cried and said, "You're the only one who doesn't leave me." Silence wasn't noble. It was what they used to keep me compliant. A storm rolled in after midnight, the kind that made you think the sky was ready to split open. I sat by the window, watching the rain start. Somewhere between thunderclaps, my father's voice came back to me, gruff, tired, but unwavering. "If you ever want to be respected, you better learn to be louder." He hadn't always understood me, but he'd seen me, he'd seen Carlin too, and he'd known. I opened my notes app, not to write a blog post, not to rant. I started a timeline. January, Carlin asks for money. I refuse. February, laptop destroyed. March, files deleted. Smear thread appears. I created folders, uploaded screenshots, found emails, backed everything up twice. Once to a drive Carlin didn't know existed, once to a platform he couldn't guess. I titled the master folder, Reclamation, because this wasn't revenge, this was recovery. I had never felt so awake and so alone in my life. After days of watching silence pile up in my inbox and trust peel away in layers, family, friends, colleagues, what I was left with was less than nothing. But something inside me had shifted. If I wasn't going to be seen, I would make sure I was heard. So that Sunday, while most people were easing into dinner with people they called their people, I put on jeans, a clean shirt, and drove to my mother's house. No text ahead, no warning. I didn't want an invitation, I wanted the truth. The sky was unusually dim for Arizona in spring, clouds thick like they were holding something back. The air smelled like scorched pavement, and wind tugged gently at the edges of my sleeves as I stepped up to the porch. I rang the doorbell once and opened the screen door without waiting. Inside, the familiar scent of pot roast hit me, but it didn't feel warm. It felt performative. Carlin was seated at the piano in the corner of the living room, lazily pressing out a melody I vaguely recognized. Something classical, slightly dramatic, like he was scoring his own movie. My mother stood near the kitchen archway, apron still on, smiling, until she saw me. "Delina?" she said, eyebrows rising. "I didn't want to miss dinner," I replied. My voice was flat, controlled. Carlin turned his head, smirked, then continued playing like this was all some delightful coincidence. I walked into the dining room, set my phone down in the center of the table, and pulled out a chair. "Sit down," I said to both of them. "We need to talk." My mother hesitated, hands still gripping a dish towel. "Sweetheart, this isn't—" "Now," I said. I didn't raise my voice, but I didn't need to. Carlin stood up, clapping his hands like a theater actor finishing a soliloquy. "Well, this is new." I stared at him. "Let's talk about the Google Drive." He blinked, then smiled again. "You think I care about your spreadsheets? You accessed my account from Mom's house. I have the log, the time, the IP address." Mom turned toward him, then back to me. "What are you talking about?" "You don't know?" I asked. He uses my laptop sometimes. I don't monitor what—" "She knew," Carlin interrupted. "But she didn't think it was a big deal. You deleted everything." "Backups exist," he said, raising an eyebrow. "Unless you didn't keep them, in which case—" "Sounds like a you problem." I looked at my mother, hoping, even now, to see shock, or at least disappointment. I got neither. "He said it was an accident," she muttered. "That he thought he was clearing space. You're always so sensitive about things." "Sensitive?" I said. "You erased me from Dad's will, and now you're defending your son for erasing my work." Carlin scoffed. "There it is. She's mad she didn't get the house." "This isn't about a house," I snapped. "It's about how you treat me like I don't exist unless you need something. It's about how every time he screws up, you act like I'm the one being cruel when I say no." My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. "Carlin said he made some mistakes. But you've changed. You sound angry." "That did it." "You don't want the truth," I said slowly. "You want quiet. You want me to swallow everything so dinner doesn't get uncomfortable." "You think this is easy for me?" she shot back, finally raising her voice. "I'm a mother. I have 2 children." "You have 1, I corrected. "The one who lies and manipulates, and you reward it every single time." Carlin laughed like I'd told a joke. "Well, someone's had a rough week." I stood up, leaned across the table. "I've lost clients, friends, people who once believed in me, because of you." He shrugged. "You always made it too easy. You act like the perfect one, Del. But everyone's got cracks." "I just showed them yours." I turned to Mom. "And you let him." She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Nothing honest, anyway. I left without saying goodbye. On the way home, the air grew colder, like the weather had finally caught up to the atmosphere between us. I didn't turn on music. I didn't scroll my phone. I just drove in silence, the only sound coming from my tires on the pavement. When I got home, the silence felt different. Less empty, more decided. I poured a glass of water, sat on the couch, and stared at the window as dusk rolled in. Around 9, my phone rang. I didn't recognize the number, but I answered anyway. "Delina?" a familiar voice asked. It took me a second. "Nathan?" "Hey. Yeah. Sorry to call out of the blue. I've been seeing some stuff online and I wasn't sure what to believe." "What kind of stuff?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Carlin messaged me. Said you've been going through a rough patch. Mentioned some stuff about your dad, that you used to borrow money and not return it." I sat up straighter. "And you believed him?" There was a pause. "I didn't want to. But he sent screenshots. Said your business was in trouble. That you were blaming everyone else." "You should know better," I said quietly. "I thought I did," he said. I hope you get the help you need." I hung up, not in anger, Not even in pain. Just done. By the time the text came in from my mother, "Don't come next week. Let things cool off," I was already opening a new document. I titled it, "Things They Don't Get to Rewrite." Then I started the list: names, dates, files, witnesses. Because if they were going to treat me like the villain, they'd better be ready for what the real story looked like. Monday came and went in a fog. I answered only the most essential emails, mostly to clients who hadn't abandoned me yet, and spent the rest of the day making quiet updates to my project archives. I moved like someone working in a museum of her own life, dusting off files, reorganizing old folders, pretending that what I was doing was just regular maintenance. But deep down, I knew I was preparing for something. On Tuesday afternoon, I realized I'd left a box of old photos and mementos at Mom's house. It wasn't valuable, not financially, but it mattered. So I drove to Chandler. The streets were quiet, and the weather had finally shifted. Cooler air, lighter breeze, spring pretending to be fall. I didn't call ahead. When I got there, no one answered the door. But the porch light was on, even in broad daylight, and the front windows were cracked open. I sat on the bench near the walkway and waited, hoping someone would show. Then I heard it. Carlin's voice. Smooth, loud enough to carry through the open window on the side. "Nah, man, she won't do a thing. Trust me, she always folds. That's why it's so easy." I froze. Every part of me went still. I didn't hear the response from whoever he was talking to, but Carlin chuckled. Deep, satisfied. "Look, I've got Mom in my corner, right? And people believe what you feed them early? That's the trick. Get ahead of the truth." My hands were clenched before I realized it. He was bragging, not even hiding it. "She's soft," he said. "Always has been. Just gotta wait her out." I stood slowly, not wanting to make a sound. The moment felt sacred in the worst way. Like I'd stumbled upon something rotten buried in the yard. There was nothing left for me in that house, not even that box of memories. I didn't knock. I walked back to my car, quietly slid into the driver's seat, and drove off with the windows rolled down, letting the air carry his words as far from me as possible. That evening, after dinner, something simple and mostly untouched, I was washing a few dishes when my phone buzzed. Unknown caller. I hesitated for a moment, then answered. "Hello?" "Delina?" a woman's voice asked, familiar, warm, but cautious. "Aunt Malis?" She exhaled. "I wasn't sure if you'd pick up." "I wasn't sure I would either," I said, setting the plate down. "I saw some of what Carlin posted," she said softly. "Read it, LinkedIn, all of it. I didn't want to believe it was him, but then I spoke to your mom. She said things I didn't expect." "Like what?" "That you were being too harsh, that you brought this on yourself." I asked if she knew about the smear campaign, and she said, "Sometimes people need to be reminded they're not perfect." There it was again. That underlying belief. If you stand up for yourself, you must be arrogant. If you set boundaries, you're difficult. "I'm sorry," Malis said. "I should have said something sooner. But I kept some things, just in case." I sat down. "What kind of things?" "Old messages, screenshots, even a document Carlin once signed using your name to take out a personal loan. I didn't understand the whole story at the time, but I knew it wasn't right." "Can you send them?" "Yes. I'll email them tonight." I didn't say thank you, not because I wasn't grateful, but because I was holding back something else. Relief, anger, vindication, all crashing into one another. After we hung up, I opened my laptop, not the one Carlin destroyed. A newer one, clean, empty, ready. I made a new folder. I called it Reclamation. Then I got to work. I didn't rush. I went methodically, like someone setting a table for war. Screenshots, call logs, IP address traces, quotes from Carlin's posts, comparison of phrasing. Everything went into labeled folders, each tagged by date and type. I created a spreadsheet to track interactions. Who called when, what they said, what was implied. Every insult, Every dismissal, every "you're overreacting," and "he's had a rough time." The more I documented, the less shaky I felt. I stayed up until 2 in the morning. The house was silent. No cars passed outside. Even the hum of the fridge seemed muted, like the world was holding its breath for me. When I finally closed my laptop, my hands didn't tremble. I stared at the folder one last time before I backed it up to a separate drive and emailed it to a new, private address. I made tea, sat on the couch, and thought. There had been a time, not that long ago, when I would have cried after a call like that, when I would have doubted my right to fight back. Not anymore. I didn't want an apology. I didn't care if Carlin confessed. I didn't even care if my mother changed her mind. I wanted the truth to live outside of me. So I opened a new tab, searched for a law firm in Phoenix specializing in defamation and digital harassment. I read through a few bios, then clicked on one. A woman named Melanie Ortiz. Her description was simple. "I don't believe in letting liars win." I clicked Contact, filled out the form, attached a zip file. In the subject line, I wrote, "Ready to file." Then I clicked Send. The morning I submitted the complaint, the sun was so bright it almost felt sarcastic. It was one of those crisp, blue-sky Arizona mornings that trick you into believing the world is kind. The kind of day you'd associate with porch swings and grocery lists, not legal action. I made myself a cup of black coffee, ignoring the urge to add anything sweet. My laptop sat open on the table, the formal complaint document displayed on the screen, title bold at the top. Formal complaint, harassment, defamation, property damage. I'd read it 8 times since Melanie, my attorney, sent the final draft. It was clean, meticulous, written without anger, just facts. Carlin's full name was there, along with screenshots, digital forensics, timestamps, emails. The folder I'd labeled Reclamation had finally found its purpose. I hovered over the Submit button for a few seconds, and then I clicked. There was no dramatic sound, no flash of lightning. Just a little progress wheel and then, Submitted. He declared war in silence. I answered the same way. The rest of the morning passed in slow, quiet motions. I did laundry, vacuumed, answered emails. I even watered the tiny cactus in the kitchen I usually forgot existed. Anything to distract me from checking my phone every few minutes. 2 days later, I was sitting on the edge of my bed, tying my shoes for a grocery run, when an email notification popped up on my phone. Subject: Urgent. Contract paused pending review. It was from my largest client, the one responsible for over half of my income. I opened it with trembling hands. "Delina, we're reaching out with concern regarding allegations that have come to our attention, suggesting you've used AI-assisted content and misrepresented original work in recent deliverables. Due to the severity of these claims, we're placing the current project on hold until further notice." The message continued in a polite, sterilized tone that made the gut punch land harder. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the screen. No one had called me. No one had asked for my side. I emailed them back immediately. Then called. Straight to voicemail. Something told me this wasn't about AI. I opened my work email. In the spam folder, I found it. An anonymous message forwarded from a burner address. A collage of fake conversations, altered deliverables, even a fake portfolio site. Cheap knockoffs of my designs, with metadata wiped and comments added suggesting lazy shortcuts. It was ugly, and it was familiar. The tone, the structure, the passive-aggressive, just thought you should know phrasing. I knew Carlin's voice, even when he was hiding behind a keyboard. And I knew exactly what to do. I didn't cry. I didn't panic. I opened a new folder in Reclamation and named it Client Sabotage. I copied the email, screenshotted the metadata, backed it up, logged every step. Then I called Melanie. "We need to escalate the case," I told her. I could hear her typing in the background. "Understood. We'll include this in the supplemental filing." "Will it be enough?" "It's more than enough," she said. "You're building something airtight." That evening, I booked a meeting with one of my smaller clients, the one who had stuck around through all of this. We met at a local cafe, one with a quiet patio tucked behind the building, shielded by desert plants and half shaded by a canvas awning, the kind of spot where real conversations happened. I arrived early, ordered tea, and sat with my notes open. I didn't plan to beg. I planned to explain. When she arrived, she gave me a small, warm smile. Her name was Joy, and she ran a nonprofit focused on literacy for immigrant families. She was sharp, direct, and most importantly, honest. "I've seen the threads," she said, getting straight to it. I nodded. "It's been a mess." "Do you know who's behind it?" "Yes." "Can you prove it?" I pulled out a printed copy of a comparison sheet. Carlin's messages from years ago matched line by line with the anonymous ones. The phrasing, punctuation, formatting, it's consistent. I've got a digital forensics consultant confirming the metadata. Joy read in silence for a few minutes. When she looked up, she said, "You know, the fact that you've documented all this, most people would have just deleted their socials and disappeared." "I thought about it," I admitted. "Why didn't you?" "Because not everyone walked away." She nodded slowly. "We'd like to continue our work with you. We'll issue a public statement if needed." Something unknotted inside me, not entirely, but enough to breathe again. We finished our tea, talked about fonts and reading levels and grant proposals. It was the most normal I'd felt in weeks. Afterward, I walked around the block before heading back home. The streets were golden with late afternoon light, kids on scooters, a dog barking in the distance, someone watering their lawn too early. Life was still happening, and I was still part of it. That night, I updated the reclamation folder one more time. I wrote a short journal entry, not for anyone else, just for me. Not everyone will stay, but the ones who do, that's where I rebuild. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and lay down, not feeling safe, exactly, but steady. The war wasn't over, but I had my footing now. The morning Carlin faked his near-death experience, I was drinking coffee and finalizing my response to the updated legal strategy with Melanie. I was deep in thought, combing through documents, when my phone buzzed with a link from Joy, the nonprofit director I'd met at the cafe. The message read simply, "You've got to see this." I clicked it. A blurry hospital photo greeted me. Carlin, dramatically reclined in a hospital bed, eyes closed, an oxygen tube looped under his nose like a prop. The caption underneath, posted on his Facebook and reshared across multiple platforms, read, "Grateful to be alive. Took a nasty shock while trying to fix mom's wiring. Family's been through enough. Some people care more about their laptops than their blood." The comments were exactly what you'd expect. "So sorry, Carlin. Stay strong. Your sister always seemed cold. Some people just aren't built for family." The post had gone semi-viral, enough that my name was now being dragged through mud by complete strangers who had only seen one photo, one caption, and had apparently decided that my refusal to endlessly forgive and forget made me cruel. Heartless, he'd timed it perfectly, just as I had begun to regain footing, just as I'd stopped feeling like the one drowning. I stared at the screen until the photo blurred from the tension in my eyes. It was a move straight out of Carlin's playbook. Control the narrative, strike before someone else can. And once again, he used Mom, her house, her safety, her name, to make it seem noble. I sat for a while without moving. Then, just after 11, my inbox pinged again. New message from Aunt Malis. Subject: "This is what you need." It was one line, one PDF attachment. I clicked without hesitation. It was a scanned document, clearly aged, a loan agreement from 4 years ago, $9,000. The lender, a private funding group in Flagstaff, the borrower, Delina Collins. But I hadn't taken out any such loan. At the bottom was a shaky signature, mine, except it wasn't. My heart clenched. I recognized the handwriting. It looked just enough like mine to pass to someone who wasn't paying attention. But not to me. Not to Melanie. There was a brief note from Malis at the bottom of the email. "Carlin asked me to notarize this. I refused. I suspected then, but didn't have the full picture. I've kept it all this time. I'm sorry it took me this long." I didn't respond immediately. I just stared at the screen, letting the truth sink deeper into my bones. He had used my name to commit fraud, and my mother had defended him again and again because it was easier than acknowledging the rot. I forwarded the email to Melanie within minutes. "This," I wrote, "is our final domino." She replied almost instantly, "We're not just suing for damages anymore. We're going after his entire credibility." I imagined Carlin sitting in his hospital bed, smug, scrolling through his notifications, seeing all the likes, all the messages that told him he was loved, that I was the villain. He wanted attention. I was about to give him an audience. That afternoon, Melanie and I met via Zoom. Her face was calm, composed. She had the air of someone who'd been through enough courtroom showdowns to spot the pattern of a coward playing victim. "We're going to build this out as a pattern of behavior," she explained. "It's not about a one-time incident anymore. It's about consistent, calculated damage." I nodded. "We already have work sabotage, identity fraud, public defamation, document falsification, and now emotional manipulation used to discredit a witness. That hospital stunt is more than petty, it's strategic and reckless." We outlined the next steps: depositions, a restraining order to protect digital access, and a social media brief to attach to the suit. After the call ended, I logged off everything: email, Facebook, Reddit. I needed silence, not absence, but stillness. I turned off my phone, closed the laptop, and stood at the kitchen counter in complete quiet. Even the street outside was unusually still, as though the world sensed I was pulling back the arrow before the release. I lit a candle. Lavender, my father's favorite scent. Then I opened my secondary laptop, the one Carlin didn't know existed, and began preparing what would become the truth bomb. Not a rant, not a plea, a series of plain, factual, time-stamped slides, each one layered with evidence: dates, contracts, emails, screenshots, voice notes. I even added a comparison of his phrasing in anonymous posts versus his known writing. Let the world decide. I didn't do this because I needed applause. I did it because I needed closure. I created a final folder, separated from the legal documentation. This one wasn't for court. This one was for the internet. I named it Receipt. It was the kind of folder you drop when words have run dry and you're tired of explaining. I spent the rest of the evening backing everything up twice, on the cloud and on a hard drive locked in a fireproof safe I'd bought on impulse 2 years earlier. By midnight, I had everything ready. One post, one truth, one audience, and no more room for doubt. By the time Saturday morning rolled in, everything was ready. I'd slept for maybe 4 hours, not out of nervousness, but out of sheer anticipation. It was the same kind of buzz I used to get before a major product launch, except this time, the product was the truth. I brewed coffee like I always did, but the moment I sat down at the kitchen table, steam curling around my fingers, I knew this day would shift something irreversible. I didn't feel powerful or brave. I felt done. And that, somehow, was more solid than courage. I opened LinkedIn, clicked Create Post. The title came to me faster than I expected, like it had been waiting inside me the whole time. Silenced by Bloodline, Why I Finally Spoke Out. Then I attached the files, slide after slide. Screen-recorded evidence of deleted files, the forged debt document, the impersonation email to my client. I added a brief note to each one, concise, emotionless, clear. I included the formal complaint Melanie had filed 2 weeks ago, the signed affidavit from Aunt Malis, the timestamp comparisons, and, because I had nothing left to protect, I attached the final screenshot of Carlin's hospital post, the one where he painted me as heartless while still hooked up to a fake oxygen tube. Then, I sat back. I stared at the post button for a full minute, and I clicked it. Immediately after, I uploaded the same content to Reddit under my real name. I wasn't hiding. I wasn't interested in dragging this through back channels or sharing anonymously. I was done with shadows. Then I opened Instagram, posted a story slide that said, "Receipts? Facts. My side of the story. Click the link." And I logged off. For 4 hours, the world said nothing. No likes, no messages, just silence. I went for a walk. Down the canal path near my apartment, past the same prickly pear cactus I'd passed every Saturday for the last 3 years. I stopped at the farmer's market, bought an iced tea, and pretended like I hadn't just thrown a match into the center of my family's entire reputation. By the time I returned home, my phone had buzzed 27 times. I unlocked it. Joy was the first message. "You are incredible." Then a string of messages from former clients. "I had no idea. I'm sorry. I always thought something didn't add up. Thank you for sharing this. If you're still doing freelance work, I'd love to collaborate again." The Reddit thread had hit the front page of RR True Off My Chest and was spreading to Twitter, TikTok, and niche professional forums. One user wrote, "This is the wildest story of sibling sabotage I've ever read, and she has the receipts to back it up." But the one that caught me off guard came from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. "Delina, it's Tara. I just saw everything. I'm crying. You were always the strong one. I wish I'd believed you back then." That's when I knew. This wasn't about taking Carlin down. It was about reclaiming my voice from every hand that had twisted it. The next morning, Carlin's employer released a statement on LinkedIn. "We do not condone unethical conduct. Mr. Carlin is no longer affiliated with our organization. We are conducting a full internal investigation." It was cold, corporate, but it was a thunderclap all the same. Within hours, news stations picked up the story. Not all of it, just the edges. The local channel ran a segment titled "Woman Speaks Out After Sibling Allegedly Forges Documents in Defamation Case." I didn't watch it. I didn't need to. By Sunday afternoon, I received a message from a blocked number. "Carlin's trying to call," Melanie said, forwarding me a screenshot. "He wants to settle privately. Should we respond?" I looked at the notification for a while. "No," I said. "Let him speak in court, like I had to." My phone buzzed again later that evening. It was a text from my mother. She hadn't messaged me in weeks. It read, "We didn't know. I didn't know. Please stop this. Families don't air dirty laundry like this." I didn't reply. She still didn't get it. This wasn't dirty laundry. This was theft. This was character assassination. This was years of bending and folding and swallowing and nodding. I sat on my balcony as the sun dipped behind the buildings, my inbox still filling with apologies and encouragement from strangers, colleagues, friends who had stayed silent for far too long. I didn't feel victorious, but I did feel lighter. I opened LinkedIn one last time, read through the thousands of comments, then I deleted the post, not out of shame, not out of fear, because it had done its job. The truth was out, and I didn't need to keep screaming. I walked through the neighborhood later that evening, passing a row of children drawing chalk outlines on the sidewalk. One little girl was sketching a huge sun with orange rays stretching into the street. Her mother glanced at me, smiled politely. I nodded back. I wasn't invisible anymore. I didn't win anything. But I reclaimed something that should have never been taken. 6 months later, I stood in front of a very different kind of door. This one painted a soft, forget-me-not blue, framed by aging white trim, and a welcome mat that didn't scream Pinterest perfect. It was just there, a little frayed around the corners, saying what it needed to without trying too hard. The keys in my hand jingled, a quiet, promising sound. They didn't feel familiar yet, but they were real. Mine. I took a deep breath and opened the door to my new apartment in Austin, Texas. The scent of lemon cleaning spray and fresh paint hit me first. Underneath it, something simpler, a blank canvas smell. The place was small, cozy, and honest. There were no granite countertops, no stainless steel appliances, no glossy magazine aesthetics, but the windows stretched wide, letting in the kind of golden sunlight that touched everything like it was welcome. The hardwood floors creaked as I walked across them, just enough to remind me I was grounded. I set a box down on the kitchen counter and took a moment, not to celebrate, not to make a declaration, just to be. This wasn't a grand finale or a victory lap. This was a beginning, and beginnings don't always announce themselves. Sometimes they arrive like a quiet breath at the end of a long sentence. I pulled out my phone and snapped a photo of my makeshift office, a folding desk by the window, a secondhand swivel chair, my new laptop already glowing with that first-time excitement. Nothing extravagant, just functional, honest space. I posted it on my private Instagram with a single caption. Clean slates aren't always clean, but they're still slates. Then I tucked my phone away, turned on my playlist, and got to work. I started part-time at a small design firm across town. The team was tight-knit, the kind that actually meant it when they said no working weekends. The clients were local nonprofits, family-run shops, startups trying to matter. The pay wasn't as high as the old days, but the hours were kind. The stress didn't follow me home. I picked up a few freelance clients on the side, people I trusted, whose vision aligned with mine. No brand speak, no manipulation, just collaboration and quiet joy in building something meaningful. Twice a week, I volunteered at the public library, one of those red brick buildings tucked between a bakery and a post office that still used real stamps. I taught digital basics to older women, mostly Spanish-speaking immigrants. Some didn't know how to open a browser. Others just wanted to email their grandkids or navigate online banking without fear. They reminded me why I fell in love with design in the first place. Not for aesthetics, not for status, for function, for people, for connection. One overcast afternoon, walking home from a grocery run with a bag full of peaches and a loaf of sourdough tucked under my arm, I passed by a newsstand on a quiet corner downtown and froze. There, staring back at me from the magazine rack, was my own face, Women Who Rise. I blinked. At first I thought it was someone who looked like me. But no. There I was, shoulders squared, hair loose, no makeup, just me. And beneath the headline, a quote. She reclaimed her name and didn't burn a single bridge. She just stopped walking across them. I laughed. Not a cynical laugh, not a bitter one. A quiet, full-bodied laugh that bubbled up and caught me by surprise. The kind that fills your chest because, for once, you're not waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're standing in a life you once imagined, but never really believed you deserved. That evening, I made dinner in my tiny kitchen. Just pasta tossed with garlic and olive oil. A glass of red wine from the bottle I'd been saving since I moved in. I set the table for one, lit a candle out of habit, and opened the magazine article on my tablet while the noodles cooled. Halfway through the piece, as I sipped my wine, an email notification appeared. From Isolda. Subject, saw you on Women Who Rise. Body, I read the article. I was proud. I'm sorry. I hope you're doing well. I stared at the screen. I read it once, then again. And I waited for a wave of emotion. A need to cry or yell or respond with some perfectly crafted monologue. But it didn't come. There was no urge to rehash the past, no fire left to pour into a reply. I typed one line. Thank you. I wish you peace. I'm okay now. And I meant it. I didn't sit there waiting for a response. I didn't keep checking my inbox. Some wounds don't close up and vanish. They become part of you. Integrated. Like a healed fracture. Stronger at the break, still occasionally sore when the weather shifts. I didn't block her, but I didn't refresh the page either. The next morning, I stood barefoot on my little balcony, coffee in hand. The street below was quiet, lined with old live oaks and neighbors who waved instead of honked. A light breeze rustled the rosemary and thyme in my potted herb box. I kept meaning to replant them properly, but for now, they were surviving just fine. A mockingbird sang from the telephone wire. Down the street, someone was mowing a lawn that didn't need mowing, just something to do, I guessed. My phone buzzed with a text. New client. The team loves your new design. You nailed it. I smiled. Not because I needed the praise, but because I didn't. This time, success wasn't proof. It wasn't armor. It wasn't redemption. It was just a quiet confirmation that I was finally living. Not performing. Some stories don't end with a bang, or a slammed door, or a fire lit behind you. Sometimes they just stop echoing. And that's enough. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers. They come from the people sitting across your dinner table. This story wasn't just about a broken laptop or a stolen inheritance. It was about choosing truth over silence, even when it costs you everything. Have you ever had to walk away from your own family just to protect your peace? If this story hit close to home, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories that challenge, heal, and reveal.
Hi there, I'm Jolene. You know, it stings when your own family laughs at your dreams, especially when that family is your big sister. At my company launch, she didn't just mock me. She made sure everyone in the room knew exactly how little she thought of me. But what she didn't realize was that the paycheck she bragged about cashing, it had my signature at the bottom. How did it get that far? And what happened when the truth finally hit her? The warm evening air buzzed with excitement as I stepped into the launch event downtown. The venue gleamed with soft golden lighting, banners of Guardian Tech Solutions hanging proudly overhead. Everything I had worked for the long nights, the sacrifices, had led to this moment. I adjusted the hem of my blazer, took a breath, and scanned the crowd. That's when I saw her, Celia, laughing in a circle of well-dressed executives, her posture relaxed, her head tilted just so to draw attention. My stomach tightened before I could stop it. After all these years, after everything, she was here. Of course she was. Celia never missed a chance to watch me stumble. I moved toward the backstage area, determined to stay focused. This was my night, not hers. But just as I reached the curtain, Celia peeled away from her group and intercepted me with that same condescending grin she'd perfected back in high school. "Wow, look at you," she cooed, her voice dripping with faux admiration. "Starting your own little project. That's cute." I held my smile, though it burned. "Thanks for coming," I said simply, stepping aside to avoid her touch. My fingers tightened around the folder in my hand, but I refused to let her see it. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Don't worry if no one notices. It's tough being the underdog." Her perfume was the same cloying sweetness I remembered, and it choked me now. I refused to flinch. Instead, I locked eyes with her and gave a polite nod, like she was a stranger at a cocktail party, not my sister, not the woman who had spent a lifetime making sure I knew exactly where I ranked. Celia lingered a second longer, waiting for a reaction. When none came, she flicked her hair, smirked, and sauntered back toward the VIP lounge, her heels clicking sharply against the marble floor. I exhaled slowly, feeling the old familiar knot in my chest. It wasn't fear, it wasn't even anger, it was something colder, sharper, a recognition. Some battles never end, they just shift forms. I pulled out my phone, skimming over the final notes for my speech. Names blurred past investors, journalists, influencers. Celia's face popped into my mind again, uninvited, a cruel reminder of how fragile public perception could be. One wrong step, one bad headline, and everything I'd built could slip away. But not tonight. Tonight was mine. I squared my shoulders and headed toward the main hall, feeling the weight of history pressing down and the thrill of knowing I was about to make my own. Jolene, the overlooked little sister, was long gone. I followed the flow of guests into the main conference hall, my heels clicking quietly against the polished floor. The stage was set with sleek black banners, spotlights sweeping the crowd as they settled into their seats. I stayed close to the side entrance, heart steady, willing myself to block out the lingering memory of Celia's smug laughter. The master of ceremonies took the stage, welcoming everyone with the kind of smooth charm you only hear at high-profile launches. I exhaled, centering myself. I had survived worse than a few snide comments and jealous glances. This moment was about my work, my vision, no one else's. A soft buzz rippled through the crowd as the MC wrapped up the opening remarks. I was moments away from being introduced. I smoothed my blazer, adjusted the mic clip to my lapel, and steadied my breathing. I could do this. I would do this. And then it happened. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Celia sidle up near the stage, pretending to chat casually with the tech crew. Before anyone could stop her, she snagged a spare microphone, flicked it on, and turned toward the audience with a wide grin. "Wow," she said, her voice dripping with sugar-coated malice. "Isn't it inspiring? These days, all you need is a laptop, a little free time, and bam, you're a CEO." Laughter exploded across the room, not the good kind, the sharp, uncomfortable kind that stings long after the sound fades. A few people winced, others exchanged awkward glances. I stood frozen backstage, every muscle taut, feeling the blood drain from my face. Celia beamed, soaking in the attention. She tossed her hair like she'd just told the world's funniest joke, then sauntered off stage as if nothing had happened. The mic squealed slightly as the crew scrambled to mute it. I clenched my fists at my sides, nails digging into my palms. Every fiber of my being screamed to storm out there, to call her out for the petty, jealous coward she was. But I didn't move. I refused to give her the satisfaction of seeing me rattled. Instead, I closed my eyes for a brief second, forcing the humiliation down like a bitter pill. I mentally ripped up the original version of my speech, the one filled with modest gratitude and soft-spoken hope, and started building a new one, sharper, clearer, stripped of any trace of apology. They were going to see who I was, not the awkward little sister Celia had always painted me to be. The MC, clearly rattled himself, shuffled back to the microphone and cleared his throat. And now, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the founder and CEO of Guardian Tech Solutions, Miss Jolene Carter. I inhaled deeply, feeling the heat of the spotlight waiting for me just beyond the curtain. As I walked toward the stage, the whispers buzzed like hornets around me. I didn't let them touch me. Not this time. My hands were steady. My heart was steel. Celia thought she could humiliate me into silence. She had no idea what she had just unleashed. The applause from the introduction still echoed as I moved behind the stage partition. I kept my pace even, measured, letting the noise fall away like dust shaken from a jacket. I could feel the heat of judgment pressing down from the rows of VIP seats. I could feel Celia's smirk, even without looking. Let her think she'd rattled me, let her gloat. It wouldn't last. The cool blast of air conditioning brushed against my skin as I adjusted the mic pinned to my blazer. The conference crew gave me a thumbs up from the wings. I nodded back, feeling the hum of energy coil tight in my spine, not from fear, from readiness. I paused for a moment, the memories creeping in without warning. I was 15 again, hunched over the garage workbench, soldering a clunky robotics project I had designed from scratch. Celia had walked in, makeup perfect, hair curled just right for prom pictures. She'd laughed when she saw the mess of wires and half-built circuits. "Seriously? You think anyone cares about this nerd junk?" Shed said, the same way someone would comment on a dead bird. Then there were the family dinners, those exhausting Sunday marathons where Celia would commandeer every conversation with stories of her internships, her scholarships, her dating life that was somehow always better than mine. I had learned early to smile and chew my food quietly, hoping no one would notice me. The stitches of those old wounds pulled tighter now, but they didn't break. They were part of the fabric I had reforged myself with. I pulled my shoulders back as I stepped closer to the edge of the stage. Somewhere near the VIP lounge, Celia's voice floated over the crowd, high and bright. "Big things happening," she chirped to a small group huddled around her. "Locked down a major contract this week. Marketing expansion for a top tech firm. Moving up in the world, you know?" Her entourage laughed on cue. I caught the sly glances she tossed toward the stage. The old narrative, Celia the winner, Jolene, the footnote. Only, she didn't know. She didn't know that the marketing department she bragged about partnering with had 2 weeks ago been bought outright by Guardian Tech Solutions. By me. I didn't move, didn't blink. I let a small smile settle on my lips, subtle enough not to draw attention, but satisfying enough to taste. She could sell all the half-truths she wanted tonight. Tomorrow, reality would hit her like a freight train. As the event coordinator signaled it was almost my turn to go on, I double-checked the lapel mic, smoothing down the fabric of my jacket. The audience buzzed louder now, a restless energy growing as they waited for something real, something new. I was ready to give it to them. If only Celia knew whose signature would be funding her next paycheck. The crew motioned for me to step forward, and the bright stage lights flared across the polished floor ahead. I moved toward the podium with purpose, heels clicking steady against the hush settling over the audience, everything sharpened into focus, the outlines of cameras, the subtle buzz of smartphones being tucked away, the expectant faces turned in my direction. I was just about to cross the final few feet when I heard her voice slice through the air like a blade. "Wait a second," Celia trilled, hijacking the moment with an exaggerated laugh. In a flash, she slipped past the stagehands and seized the microphone, her faux charm dripping like syrup. "Before the next speaker graces us," she drawled, "I just want to say how proud I am of my baby sister. I mean, These days, anyone with Wi-Fi and a dream can call themselves a CEO, right? A ripple of uncomfortable laughter rolled through the crowd. The MC froze, half lifting a hand as if to intervene, but Celia plowed on without missing a beat. I remember when Jolene couldn't even keep a Tamagotchi alive, she said, grinning broadly. And now look, changing the world, one cute little app at a time. More laughter, sharper this time. Some guests exchanged uneasy glances. Others hid their smiles behind cocktail glasses. I caught one investor I recognized stiffen slightly, his expression flickering with doubt. My stomach clenched, but outwardly, I stayed perfectly still. Every instinct screamed at me to rip the mic from her hand, but I didn't. I couldn't afford a scene. Not tonight. I lifted my chin and met Celia's eyes across the stage. No smile, no scowl, just a steady, deliberate stare, a tilt of my head that said everything she needed to hear. Enough! For the briefest second, something in her smirk faltered. She let out a forced chuckle and, with exaggerated flourish, handed the microphone back to the stunned MC, who mumbled an awkward thanks. Celia sashayed off the stage like she had just won an award, basking in her own petty triumph. But she didn't realize. The rules had changed. I wasn't the timid shadow she used to walk over. I was the storm she never saw coming. I adjusted my blazer, brushed a stray hair behind my ear, and stepped into the glare of the lights. The air was thick with tension, and yet strangely everything inside me had gone still. I could almost hear my own heartbeat, steady and sure. This wasn't just a speech anymore. This was a line being drawn. The spotlight hit me full in the face as I took my place at the podium. A low hum of conversation fizzled into silence. I rested my palms lightly on the edge of the podium, feeling the fine wood beneath my fingertips, and offered a slow, easy smile. No tremble in my hands, no quiver in my voice. I owned this moment. No one could steal it from me. "Good evening," I said, my voice carrying steady and warm across the room. "Thank you all for being here tonight. It's not every day you get to see the beginning of something new, something real." I saw Celia in the second row, legs crossed, arms folded, a gleam of triumph still flickering in her eyes. Let her enjoy it. She had no idea what was coming. "I founded Guardian Tech Solutions," I continued, "not because I had the flashiest idea or the loudest voice in the room, but because I believed in the power of resilience, in the power of those who build quietly, while others are busy chasing applause." A few heads nodded. I caught a flicker of unease cross Celia's face. I paced the stage slowly, the way I had practiced, letting my words breathe. The tension in the room thickened with every step, every beat of measured silence. "And speaking of building," I said, pausing just long enough to feel the anticipation tighten, "I'm thrilled to announce that Guardian Tech has completed a major strategic acquisition." Murmurs swept through the audience. "A few weeks ago," I went on, "we finalized the purchase of one of the most promising marketing divisions in the tech space, formerly part of Vanguard Strategies." I saw it happen in real time, the way Celia's mouth froze mid-smirk, her hand faltering halfway to her champagne glass. A visible ripple passed through her posture like a current. Vanguard Strategies, the very department Celia had been bragging about all evening. I let the silence stretch, savoring the delicious, irreversible shift. "Innovation isn't just about invention," I said, voice calm, deliberate. "It's about vision, and sometimes it's about recognizing the value of the people others overlook." The murmurs grew louder. I saw investors leaning in, journalists scribbling frantically, heads turning toward Celia with dawning realization. And through it all, I simply smiled, the kind of smile that says, "Checkmate." The first crack in her armor appeared almost immediately. Celia shifted in her seat, shoulders stiffening, mouth twitching in a desperate attempt to reassemble her trademark smirk. I stayed silent, letting the tension bloom. No need to rush. The truth had already done most of the heavy lifting. She couldn't help herself. With a forced chuckle, Celia rose from her seat, smoothing her designer dress as she snatched a microphone from a startled technician. "There's clearly been a little miscommunication," she said, her voice pitched high enough to betray the panic tightening her throat. "Nothing's finalized yet. These tech deals, paperwork gets messy." A few scattered chuckles floated through the crowd, but they didn't sound kind. They sounded wary. From my vantage point under the spotlight, I caught the skeptical glances being exchanged among the investors, the furtive whispers among the journalists. Celia was sinking, and the room could smell it. I waited until her voice trailed off into a hollow, awkward laugh. Then I stepped forward, lifting the clicker in my hand. "No confusion," I said evenly, clicking to the next slide. The giant screen behind me lit up with the Guardian Tech Solutions logo, paired with an official press release. Guardian Tech Solutions finalizes strategic acquisition of Vanguard Strategies Marketing Division. The date? 2 weeks ago. The signatures, bold and unmistakable, mine at the top. A collective gasp rippled across the audience. Phones shot up to capture screenshots. A few reporters practically leapt to their feet, scribbling notes with furious urgency. I didn't gloat. I didn't even glance at Celia. I simply moved to the next slide, a live feed from Guardian Tech's website, prominently displaying the acquisition announcement. No rumors, no pending negotiations. A done deal. The truth wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was final. It was public. It was devastating. I lowered the clicker, letting the evidence hang there like a guillotine. Celia stood frozen in place, mic dangling uselessly from her hand. Her mouth opened, then closed again. For the first time all night, no slick comeback, no sugar-coated jab, no desperate spin could save her. The silence that fell over the room was deafening. The room didn't breathe. It hung there, suspended in a strange limbo of disbelief, shock, and something else. Something Celia hadn't anticipated. Doubt. I didn't linger on stage. I stepped away, leaving the truth to do its quiet, irreversible work. As I moved into the cocktail area, the clink of glasses and soft murmurs filled the dimmer space. The smell of champagne and fresh-cut flowers was suddenly too sweet, too heavy. Small groups formed instantly, orbiting around hushed conversations and side glances. I could feel it, the shift, a new current flowing beneath the polite surface. But Celia wasn't finished. I caught her out of the corner of my eye, weaving through the clusters of guests like a shark scenting blood. Her smile was brittle now, her laugh too loud as she sidled up to investors, board members, anyone with influence. "She's ambitious, sure," I overheard her telling a group by the bar. "But acquisitions like that? They don't happen without cutting a few corners. Regulators are going to have questions. Just wait." The words were sugar-coated in concern, but the venom underneath was unmistakable. I didn't react. I sipped my water, nodded at a passing journalist, and kept my breathing steady. Celia's desperation had shifted from silent glares to whispered knives. My phone vibrated in my clutch. A quick glance at text from a friendly journalist I trusted. "Heads up, Celia's trying to plant stories about shady practices. Already sent a couple of emails out." Of course she had. Still, no panic. I made my way to the event coordinator's booth, requested a quick update through the venue's official communication screens, a tool normally reserved for lost items or schedule changes. Minutes later, every screen around the event lit up. Guardian Tech Solutions confirms full regulatory approval for its recent acquisition. All documentation available upon request. Transparency is not just a promise, it's our foundation. Simple, clean, unshakable. The buzz shifted again. Guests checking their phones, verifying what they'd just seen. A few turned toward Celia now, not with admiration, but with wary distance. She felt it too. Her face paled, the way she shrank into herself just slightly before forcing another too bright smile. But the damage was done, and not to me. The energy in the room had shifted again, but this time it was irreversible. Gone were the curious stares and polite murmurs. What remained now was a sharp, almost clinical detachment, the way you might observe the final act of a slow, inevitable downfall. No one moved to comfort Celia. No one offered her an escape. I adjusted the microphone stand and cleared my throat lightly. The sound snapped a few heads up, pulling what was left of the attention toward me. "I appreciate you all staying," I began, my voice steady, resonant in the half-empty hall. Tonight wasn't just about celebrating a milestone. It was about setting a new standard. The words felt heavier than I'd planned, but right. Necessary. I continued, pacing myself with a calm that felt both foreign and natural. Guardian Tech was built on more than innovation. It was built on trust, transparency, and accountability. And moving forward, we will maintain zero tolerance for any conduct that undermines those principles. I didn't look at Celia. I didn't need to. The ripple effect hit harder when it wasn't directed. In that spirit, I said, effective immediately, Guardian Tech will be severing all business relationships with any parties found engaging in activities inconsistent with these values. A sharp murmur ran through the room. Not loud, just loud enough. I gestured toward the digital screens that had lit up again behind me, this time displaying links to full public documentation, acquisition contracts, regulatory approvals, and, quietly embedded within it all, a detailed compliance report. One that named, without flair or drama, the exact misconduct that had been swirling beneath Celia's polished surface. No accusations, no screaming matches, just facts. Just light cast into places she never thought anyone would look. The final blow didn't come with a slam or a spectacle. It came with a clinical, professional closing of doors. I stepped away from the podium as polite applause, not wild, not celebratory, but respectful, filled the air. Enough to acknowledge a clean end. Celia remained rooted in place, isolated in the center of the swirling aftermath, a statue built on the fragile foundation of appearances. And now those appearances were shattered. I didn't wait for her reaction. I didn't offer a parting glance. Some wars are won not with the sword, but by refusing to fight on their terms. And I had just closed the battlefield behind me. A week later, I sat in my new office, sunlight pouring through the tall windows and pooling across the hardwood floors. Stacks of signed contracts and welcome letters from new partners lined the edge of my desk, tangible proof that the world had moved on, even if some bruises hadn't fully faded. The air smelled faintly of fresh paint and new beginnings. I leaned back in my chair, letting the quiet settle in my chest. No noise, no chaos, just the steady hum of a life rebuilding itself. The news had traveled faster than I expected. Celia's name circulated, but not in ways she had once craved. Words like untrustworthy and high risk started appearing alongside hers in the industry chatter. Firms withdrew partnerships, invitations stopped coming. Some whispered about legal inquiries looming in the background, but I didn't chase those rumors. They weren't my victory to savor. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. It wasn't about her anymore. It was about what I had built and what I refused to lose again. From across the room, my phone buzzed with updates from the PR team. Interviews requested, keynote offers piling up, venture capitalists asking for meetings. All validation, yes, but none of it filled the part of me that still ached. Because some wounds don't disappear. They don't scream. They just stay quiet, persistent reminders of what survival costs. I stood up and crossed the room to the wide windows overlooking downtown Austin. The city moved below me, fast and bright and unconcerned with old grudges. I wasn't looking for revenge anymore. The real victory wasn't in ruining her. It was in refusing to let her define me ever again. I had built something that no whispered insult, no cheap smear campaign could touch because it was real. It was earned, and it was mine. The door to my office opened softly, and my assistant poked her head in. "Contract for Vanguard Tech just arrived for final signature, Miss Carter." "Thank you," I said, taking the folder from her hands. I sat back down, flipped open the file, and signed my name with a clear, steady hand. As the pen lifted from the paper, I realized the best revenge wasn't destroying her life. It was reclaiming my own. After everything I went through, one truth stands taller than all the noise. You don't have to destroy others to succeed. You don't have to become like the people who tried to break you. Real power, the kind that lasts, is built on integrity, quiet resilience, and the refusal to let bitterness define your story. I learned that winning isn't about crushing someone else. It's about standing so firmly in who you are that no one else's cruelty can move you. And if you're facing your own battles right now, family betrayals, workplace sabotage, moments where you feel small and unseen, please remember this. You are not powerless. Your value isn't decided by the loudest voice in the room. It's decided by your work, your integrity, and the life you build on your own terms. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from someone you thought would always be in your corner? Or faced a moment where you had to choose between sinking to someone else's level or standing taller than the storm? I'd love to hear your story. If this video touched your heart, leave a 1 inch in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't quite hit home for you, I'm still grateful you gave it your time. Tell me why in the comments and where you're tuning in from. Let's connect and share, because sometimes our hardest stories are the ones that teach us how strong we really are. And if you'd like more real, raw, empowering stories like this one, please don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll never miss the next chapter we'll walk through together. Thank you for being here. Hi there, I'm Aurelia. My sister once looked me in the eye and said I was useless after I built the very company that paid for her red carpet dress and corner office. We started with a laptop on my kitchen floor. I wrote the code. I pitched the product. But somehow, she got the CEO title, and I got locked out of the system I designed. It wasn't just betrayal. It was premeditated, legal, polished, one boardroom, one signature. One phone call changed everything. They erased me from my own success, my name, my voice, even my father's pride. But how far did they go behind my back? And why was everyone silent? The elevator doors opened with a soft chime, and for a moment, everything smelled like lavender and burnt coffee, the usual at DNA Systems. Seattle's gray morning bled through the floor-to-ceiling windows, casting long reflections across the glass desk where I sat, typing the final integration specs for our newest logistics client. It was quiet, my kind of quiet, the kind where people worked instead of talked. I liked it that way. No attention, no headlines, just output. I didn't need spotlights. I built this company from silence, line by line, feature by feature. I led like a ghost in the system, and the numbers spoke for me. A Slack ping broke my flow. Dorian needs you upstairs, now. I grabbed my notepad, not because I needed it, but because old habits die hard. On my way to the executive lounge, I passed the portrait wall. Only one photo had been added in the past year, Dorian's with a tech award I had won and he had accepted. When I stepped inside the lounge, my eyes locked instantly on her. Celeste. She was perched on the edge of the leather sofa like she'd never left, wearing a crimson blouse that screamed power and perfume that clung like a trap. Dorian stood beside her, beaming like someone who didn't see the blade pressed against his legacy. "Well, look who it is," she said, uncrossing her legs. "Long time no see, little sis." I felt the sting behind my ribs, but smiled the way you smile when you're in a room full of cameras. Polite, hollow. "I didn't know you were in town," I said, steady. "She wants to help," Dorian interrupted, "and I think it's time." Time. That word rang like a warning shot. Celeste hadn't touched this company in a decade, and now she wanted to help? No phone call, no email. Just a polished entrance, like she'd never abandoned the mess I cleaned up. She didn't hug me, didn't ask how I'd been, just showed up and sat down, like the throne had always been waiting. I walked out without asking questions. I didn't need to. Her presence was the answer. The next morning, I arrived early, as always. My mug was already warm when Dorian's assistant asked me to head to the conference room. The whole senior team was there. Not unusual. What was unusual was Celeste sitting at the head of the table, in my seat. Dorian cleared his throat. "Let's get started. As many of you know, our company's moving into a new growth phase." I knew that tone. It was the one he used before laying someone off. "With that in mind," he continued, "I'm proud to announce that Celeste will be joining as co-CEO, effective immediately." I didn't blink. I didn't move. My title remained unchanged. CTO. But titles are window dressing. Power lives in access. And Celeste had just inherited half the keys without earning any of the locks. No discussion, no forewarning, no dignity. I kept my voice neutral when I leaned toward Dorian and said, "Was this your decision alone?" He avoided my eyes. Celeste, however, didn't flinch. "Don't take it personal, Ray. We need someone who can represent us on the outside. Tech's only part of the picture." It was that word, only, that hit hardest. Only tech. The architecture, the product, the patents, the growth. Only. The meeting moved on, but I didn't hear most of it. My focus shifted to faces, who was nodding, who was avoiding eye contact. Small things, micro expressions. I'd learned to read them over years of being underestimated. When the room cleared, Marcus, one of our junior engineers, clapped Celeste on the back and said, "Damn, that was smooth." I started making notes that night. Not just code commits or client briefings, patterns, changes, the kinds of small shifts you notice when someone's trying to erase you slowly, methodically. By the end of that week, Slack channels changed. Projects were being assigned differently. Clients I had onboarded were now rerouted to Celeste's calendar. A junior dev mistakenly credited her for the inventory platform I had built from scratch. I didn't correct him, not yet. You don't react when you're being outpaced. You observe, you document, you wait. I began tagging email threads quietly, saving meeting transcripts, archiving access logs. The developer in me knew that every move left fingerprints, and Celeste was leaving hers all over things she hadn't touched before. I wasn't panicking. This wasn't panic. It was protocol. But I didn't know yet. This wasn't just about roles. It was a hostile takeover in lipstick. The first blow wasn't delivered in a meeting or a hallway ambush. It arrived on my screen, quiet, calculated, and already viral. That morning, I logged into our company portal to check a support backlog. But the page had changed. Celeste's face greeted me at the top, framed by a glossy rebrand, the new face of innovation. I clicked instinctively, and it redirected to a Forbes article already circulating on LinkedIn, Twitter, even tech subreddits. The headline hit harder than coffee: How Celeste Winters is Disrupting Legacy Systems in Tech. Legacy. I was apparently a relic now. In the article, she was quoted saying, "This platform is my baby. I've nurtured it from the ground up with a vision for modern businesses." I didn't blink. I didn't scroll. I just stared until the words burned. No mention of me, not one line about the dev team. No photo of the engineers who'd worked nights beside me, eating vending machine dinners and debugging broken features at 2 a.m. My voice caught in my throat, but I didn't let it rise. I just whispered to myself, she didn't just steal credit. She rewrote history and deleted me. By the time I walked into the leadership roundtable that afternoon, I had already rehearsed silence. Celeste was seated beside Dorian again, this time with her own placard. The room buzzed with low chatter, fake laughs, half-hearted caffeine. They were all waiting for her to speak. During the meeting, one of the product leads brought up our latest architecture update. "That rollout was seamless," he said. "One of the cleanest code transitions we've ever had." I didn't speak. I let the compliment hang, just long enough for it to float where it belonged. Then Celeste cleared her throat. "That was a team effort," she said, smiling. "I guided most of that. Lies are funny things. They don't even tremble when they're spoken with confidence." Then she turned toward me, and the entire room fell still. "You're great with code, Aurelia," she said casually, with that trademark patronizing tone. "But not everyone's cut out for leadership." I watched half the table flinch. The other half kept their eyes glued to their laptops, as if suddenly fascinated by calendar invites. Dorian didn't say a word. My jaw tightened, but I smiled. She didn't stab me. She peeled me open in front of witnesses, and none of them stepped in. No one defended me, not even Dorian, who once told me I had a mind like a machine, precise and relentless. Back in my office, I closed the door and sat there, hands resting on the desk, mind cycling through every word she said, every glance she stole, every inch of recognition she clawed away. I wasn't angry, not yet. But I was done pretending this was normal. Within a week, the tone inside the company shifted, subtly but clearly. Slack mentions went from routine to rare. I'd be tagged in dev threads late, after key decisions had been made. Project approvals that used to pass through my inbox now landed on Celeste's desk. A new junior exec, fresh from some overpriced MBA program, accidentally introduced her during a client call as one of the founding minds behind our platform. I raised an eyebrow. Celeste didn't correct him. Later that day, I walked past her office. She was laughing with Dorian, sipping some imported matcha like royalty. She'd built nothing, but now she was everything. I started recording every instance, every omission, every stolen moment, screenshots, emails, meeting transcriptions, anything that proved I had been there before she decided to wear my skin. I wasn't asking to be celebrated. I was demanding to be recognized for what I built, with my hands, with my sacrifice. It wasn't jealousy, it was justice. And I could feel the line she crossed harden into something irreversible. Because on Friday, during a town hall quanda, someone asked, "What do you think differentiates DNA from other software companies?" Celeste answered instantly, "Simplicity, leadership, vision." She paused, then added, "We cut through legacy code, old systems, useless processes." The word rang like a gunshot. Useless. She didn't look at me when she said it. She didn't have to. The room stayed quiet, that same still, afraid quiet that always follows cruelty when no one wants to get involved. My fingers dug into the armrest, but I didn't speak. Not yet. Let her have the podium. Let her think she owned the spotlight. Because if Celeste wanted a narrative war, she just started it. By Monday morning, I knew something was coming. You could feel it in the air, the kind of unease that creeps under the skin before a system crashes. The building felt colder, or maybe it was just me. There was a silence between the elevators and the hallway that hadn't existed before. I stepped out on our floor and stopped. My nameplate was gone. The office I had worked in for nearly 8 years, the space I had designed, the one with the server dashboard on one wall and sticky notes layered with handwritten algorithms on the other, was empty, bare. The desk wiped clean, not a paperclip out of place. HR called it a space optimization decision. "Just a reshuffle," the assistant said over the phone. "We thought this side room might suit your needs better. Fewer distractions." "Fewer people, you mean?" I didn't argue. I nodded politely. Then I packed my things, the few they hadn't already touched, and walked to the new room. It wasn't even a proper office, more like a converted copy nook. No window, buzzing overhead light that hummed off tempo. My chair didn't swivel right. The Ethernet cable dangled like a sad afterthought. Not a single person made eye contact as I walked past. They didn't fire me. They made me invisible. By Wednesday, my calendar had gone suspiciously blank. Meetings I used to lead were happening without me. I checked the ops dashboard. My admin access had been downgraded. No explanation. No notice. That afternoon, I ran into Ben, one of our younger execs, by the coffee machine. He smiled, clueless. "Hey, I just saw the new roadmap. Pretty slick. Celeste's really got the vision thing down." I tilted my head. "Which roadmap?" He blinked. "The one shared at this morning's exec sync. You weren't there?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. That moment spoke louder than anything he could have said. I walked back to my new room, logged in, and tried to access the roadmap folder. Access denied. I built the system. Now I was locked out of it. Late that evening, I stared at my own reflection in the dark monitor. Not broken, just paused. The way a storm holds its breath before it hits. I decided to call Mom. I didn't need comfort. I just needed someone who remembered who I was. Before all this. She picked up on the second ring. "Hi, sweetheart." I sat there, trying to phrase the thing without sounding bitter. I talked about the move, the meeting exclusions, the casual undermining. I kept it calm, factual. She was quiet. Then she sighed. "Maybe this is just growing pains. Celeste is under a lot of pressure, too." I felt my grip on the phone tighten. Pressure? Was I supposed to give her grace for dismantling my work just because she dressed it in heels and smiled through a press release? I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just said, "Thanks, Mom," and hung up. But the silence that followed her words said more than she knew. When your own mother offers sympathy to the person hurting you, it makes you wonder how long you've been misreading loyalty. Maybe love had always been conditional in our house. Quiet for one child, pride for another. Celeste knew that, and now she was using it as leverage. Back at the office, I began updating a personal spreadsheet. Nothing on company servers. Just my own list. Meetings missed, approvals rerouted, job titles changed without HR notification. The data told its own story. Like malware burrowing through a network, this wasn't chaos. It was strategy. Slow, deliberate. I'd seen this before. In failing systems, when one node starts getting isolated, it's not long before the rest of the network forgets it ever mattered. First, they move you. Then they mute you. Then they erase you. But I wasn't a node. I was the architect. There's a distinct tone your gut makes when something doesn't sit right. Not quite fear, not quite anger. It's more like an itch you can't scratch. And that's exactly what I felt the next morning when I opened my laptop and saw a red flag blinking in the corner of my screen. License check failed. At first I figured it was just a back-end hiccup. Happens sometimes when load balancing shifts overnight. But when I pinged the dev logs, the failure looped 3 times, then pointed to something I hadn't touched in months. Clause 18b. That wasn't part of our standard license language. I should know. I wrote it. My heart didn't race, but I leaned in, narrowed my eyes, and whispered to myself, "What did you do?" The clause was buried, 4 subpages deep into a vendor contract update Celeste had fast-tracked, while I was busy being excluded from the roadmap meetings. Its header read like something harmless, Asset Consolidation Protocol, but its content was poison dressed in Times New Roman. Effective upon signature, intellectual property derived from tools under shared strategic oversight shall be considered jointly owned. Strategic oversight. A vague, legally stretchable phrase. It meant nothing and everything. I dug deeper, combing through DocuSign logs and internal memos, and there it was, my signature, forged digitally by an assistant I had never worked with. The digital trail linked back to a firm in Manhattan. Name on the record, Harper Klein, a contract lawyer from Celeste's previous firm in New York. So that was the plan. Erase me not just from meetings or Slack threads, but from ownership itself. She wasn't just taking credit, she was reassigning history, line by line, clause by clause. I stared at the screen, jaw clenched. My calendar pinged, but I ignored it. What was the point of meetings now, when every agenda had already been rewritten? I walked into her office that afternoon without knocking. Celeste was on the phone laughing softly, then turned to me with mock surprise. "Ray, you okay?" I didn't sit. "Clause 18b, I said flatly. "You slipped it into the vendor rollout under my name." She didn't even blink, just set the phone down slowly. If you had paid more attention, you'd have caught it. It wasn't what she said, it was how she said it, like she was already rehearsing it in a mirror for weeks. I crossed my arms. That software was mine, built before you showed up with your PowerPoints and buzzwords. She tilted her head like she pitied me. "This isn't personal, it's business," I smirked. Funny, that's exactly what people say before I make it personal. Dorian walked by, paused at the doorframe, glanced between us, then kept walking. Of course he did. Celeste leaned back in her chair, drumming her fingers on the glass table like she was already bored with me. "You always made great things, Ray. But the world doesn't reward builders. It rewards storytellers." I didn't respond. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. That would have been giving her exactly what she wanted. A reaction she could spin into unprofessional conduct. Back at my desk, my broom closet with Wi-Fi, I opened a folder labeled Innovate Defense Protocol. It was my private repository, created long before Celeste even knew where the back-end servers were hosted. In it were copies of every architectural blueprint I'd written, the original copyright filings, every commit note with time-stamped authorship. I clicked open a file titled Independent IP Clause 22 Safeguard. My fingers moved like they had a mission. No panic, no fury, just code. Because if she wanted to play the contract game, I'd take her to court in the language she didn't speak. Mine. She had Harper Klein and a team of stylists for her magazine shoots. I had syntax and source control. She rewrote the rules. I wrote the code. The invitation said, "Celebrating 60 years of vision, Dorian Winters." But from the moment I walked through the ballroom doors, I knew it wasn't a celebration. It was a coronation. Downtown Seattle, Hotel Halcyon. Crystal chandeliers, a string quartet, and a red carpet that screamed curated opulence. The kind of event people post about but forget the next morning, unless something scandalous happens. I wore a tailored black sheath dress. Classic. Understated. Me. No one looked twice. Celeste arrived fashionably 10 minutes late, in a blazing red gown that could have doubled as a warning flare. Laughter followed her like perfume. Her arm looped through Dorian's. They walked in like royalty returning from exile. At the entrance, the host paused when reading my name. Oh, right, table 5. Not at the front, not even near family, just far enough away to feel the message. She didn't plan a party, she planned a stage. Dinner started late, everyone buzzed about Dorian's legacy, the company's rise, Seattle's tech boom. My name floated once or twice, mostly by people too young to remember where the first server rack was built. My garage. Celeste stood halfway through the main course, tapping her wineglass gently with a fork. May I? The quartet hushed, the lights dimmed just enough to create drama. A photographer stepped forward, right on cue. I want to thank everyone here, she began, eyes shining, voice syrupy, for coming to celebrate not just 60 years of wisdom from my father, but a new era for D&A systems. She gestured to Dorian, who beamed like a proud coach. Isolde kept her eyes on her bread plate. I've been honored to return to a company full of potential, Celeste continued. But potential must be unlocked, direction must be clear. That's why, after months of conversations, I'm humbled to accept the role of sole CEO, effective immediately. A pause. Then, like a skilled assassin, she twisted the knife with a smile. Of course, my sister Aurelia has done amazing work on the technical front, but as we grow, it's essential we lead with vision, not just code. I didn't blink, not because it didn't hurt, but because pain loses its power when you see it coming. The room remained frozen. No applause, no gasps, just the awkward clinking of forks, suddenly unsure where to land. Dorian nodded beside her, complicit in silence. I looked toward Isolde. She didn't meet my eyes. She didn't have to. She already picked her daughter. And it wasn't me. She didn't just steal my title. She robbed me of their silence. Later that night, while stepping out for air, I passed by the staff hallway behind the ballroom. That's when I heard Marcus. My Marcus, the junior developer I had mentored since his first line of Python. The one I vouched for when he screwed up that database deployment last year. He was laughing. With the way she got tossed tonight, he said to Celeste's assistant, I'm surprised she didn't fake a tech emergency just to storm out. Laughter. Then the assistant replied, Girl, please. She looked like she knew it was coming. Maybe that's why she dressed like a funeral. Another laugh. I didn't say a word. I didn't make a sound. I just turned around and walked slowly back to my table. The system didn't crash. It was rewritten from within. The betrayal didn't come from outside hackers. It came from trusted credentials. At the end of the night, I waited until most people were tipsy enough to forget details. I walked over to Dorian's table. He was laughing with a board member about stock projections. I placed a small wrapped box in front of him. A little something, I said softly. Happy birthday, Dad. He blinked, caught off guard. Isolde didn't even lift her head. Inside the box was a photo album. One I had spent 3 months assembling. Every phase of the company. From the first check we couldn't cash, to the first patent filed under my name, to the day Dorian handed me a set of keys and said, Make this place better than I did. That part didn't make the album. But I remembered. I walked out of that ballroom without another word. No scene, no tears, just a quiet exit. The kind that doesn't announce itself, but leaves a dent. I sent a single text to my lawyer. Initiate fallback protocol. She turned the lights on herself. I'd already flipped the main breaker. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't need to. While the ballroom emptied of champagne flutes and hollow praise, I sat in my home office with my laptop open, the soft blue glow casting long shadows across the walls. No music, no distractions, just me, a black coffee gone cold, and a desktop cluttered with contracts, code windows, and a single sticky note that read, Clause 22, license expiration 3 a.m. May 11th. I had waited a long time for this window. They played the title game. I played the asset game. And while Celeste was busy printing invitations and booking photographers, I'd been scripting lines of legal and logical code, each one wired to a timer they never saw coming. By 2:43 a.m., the contracts were confirmed, the delivery sequence tested, and the automated messaging queued. At exactly 3 a.m., I placed a call to Mr. Kraus, my attorney of over 10 years. He answered on the second ring. It's time, I said. Initiate non-renewal across all Innovate Solutions assets tied to D&A systems. No renegotiation? He asked, just to be sure. None, I replied. Let it expire. Cold. He didn't argue. He knew better. 3 minutes later, the first wave of emails launched. Subject line, leadership changes at DNA. What this means for you. Recipients, every major client who licensed our flagship product. Every vendor that had tied their software integrations to our platform. And every employee who ever signed a contract citing my name on their onboarding packet. Inside the email was a single message. Effective immediately, the license agreement between Innovate Solutions LLC and DNA Systems will not be renewed. Ownership of the IP remains with Innovate Solutions. For those seeking continuity, contact us directly to discuss migration pathways. By 3:41 a.m., I had over 40 red receipts. By 4 a.m., the replies started rolling in. One from a longtime client in Austin. If you're not in charge, we're not in business. Another from an education tech partner. We signed because of you, not because of her. And another. Please call us first thing. We're not staying if this is the direction. I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't about revenge. This was reclamation. Respect isn't awarded at banquets or delivered with titles. It's built in silence, written into contracts, wired in line by line. At 8:55 a.m., I pulled into the DNA parking garage, same as always. No fanfare, no tantrum, no security escort. I still had access, for now. I walked straight to my floor. Celeste's new assistant did a double take but said nothing. By 9:02, I was seated at my old desk. A different room, same backbone. 3 minutes later, the door slammed open. Celeste, what are you doing here? She snapped, as if the office belonged to her DNA. I looked up from my laptop, calmly. Wrapping up some loose ends. Behind her, Dorian arrived half out of breath, clearly summoned in a panic. You were out of line last night, he said, pointing a trembling finger. And you, I said without missing a beat, were out of depth for the last 5 years. That shut him up. Celeste's voice rose. You've caused chaos, do you understand that? I leaned back, completely unshaken. What I understand is, this company was standing on software it doesn't own, run by a face it doesn't recognize. I stood, motioned to the monitor behind me, and pulled up the dashboard. License access? Revoked. Core product status? Offline. Support integrations? Redirected. Celeste's phone buzzed again, and again. Her face paled. A third buzz. Dorian checked his screen, eyes widening. You don't have the authority? She tried to bark. You never had the infrastructure. I cut in. She stepped forward, furious. This is illegal. I looked at her and said flatly, this is contractual. I tapped the screen again. A new set of notifications popped up. Client exit triggers, migration inquiries, support ticket spikes, 9:05. By now they've read everything. Every lie Celeste told. Every contract she glossed over. Every name that's signed not because of her, but because of me. Let her try to PR spin this one. I didn't leak a memo. I pulled the product. She tried to replace me with a speech. I replied with system failure. By 9:22 a.m., I had confirmation from 7 of our 10 biggest clients. They weren't just pausing contracts. They were terminating. Full stop. The emails were cold, corporate, and surgical. Exactly the tone Celeste liked to use. Now it was boomeranging. At 9:40, I received a calendar update. Emergency board session, 10 a.m. vertical bar, main conference room A. Celeste wasn't wasting time. Neither was I. I walked into that boardroom carrying 2 things. My tablet and a printed folder with 6 tabbed sections, each one color-coded, time-stamped, and cross-referenced with contract law. Dorian was already seated, face pale, hands clasped tightly. Celeste stood near the head of the long walnut table, speaking quietly with board chair Marin Liu and 2 other longtime members. Their expressions were strained, but not surprised. She saw me and rolled her eyes like I was late to my own funeral. Marin gave me a shallow nod. We'd like to keep this contained, she said. Internal disruption isn't good for public confidence. Then I suggest everyone here put their phones face down and ears wide open, I said, placing the folder on the table. Celeste scoffed. This isn't a courtroom, Ray. I looked at her flatly. No, but you're about to wish it was. I clicked my tablet and projected the first document on the screen. Clause 22 of the Innovate Licensing Agreement, Proprietary Ownership Structure, expires May 11th at 3 a.m., was not renewed. Next slide. Clause 6. Unauthorized access post-expiration constitutes breach of contract and intellectual trespass. Slide 3. Backend logs, IP addresses, timestamps, and user accounts. All tracing back to her assistant's credentials, accessing my code at 3:17 a.m. I built this system, I said, eyes locked on Celeste. You didn't just overstep, you trespassed. The room went still. Celeste crossed her arms, chin high. You're being dramatic. Marin looked at the logs. These are your servers? I nodded once. My servers, my codebase, my contracts. Celeste waved a hand. We're talking about software, not bloodlines. I didn't flinch. Interesting, because you've been acting like you inherited the company in a will. One board member cleared his throat. Let's focus. Aurelia, are you saying legal grounds exist for a claim? I handed out printed notices from clients. No, I'm not saying it, they are. One letter was from Zilix Tech. Due to breach of leadership continuity and loss of IP security, our agreement with DNA is nullified immediately. Another, pending legal review, we advise against further transactions with DNA. Celeste started to panic. Her face tightened and she spoke too fast. This is all being twisted. No one said we couldn't revisit contracts. The IP was always collaborative. I cut her off. I wrote every line of that product in my own name, years before your return. You knew that, you ignored that. And now you'll face that. Dorian finally spoke up. We were trying to modernize. You were resistant. I turned toward him. You call what she did modernization? I tapped the last file. It showed Celeste authorizing a contract transfer without board-wide consensus. Board Chair Liu exhaled. Celeste, you said she had no leverage. She doesn't? Celeste blurted. She's acting out. I smiled. No, Celeste, I'm acting legally and strategically, two things you clearly underestimated. A board member asked softly, What's your end goal, Aurelia? Clarity, I said, accountability, and a company that doesn't reward theft with titles. There was no shouting, no tantrums, just silence, tight and suffocating. Finally, Liu tapped her pen and said, We'll need to convene privately. Legal counsel will advise. I gathered my things slowly, letting the silence linger. As I reached the door, I turned and looked straight at Celeste. This boardroom is your fortress? I said, calm as glass. Good. I hope you enjoy watching it collapse from the inside. The room didn't explode after I left. It imploded. I could feel the weight of it even through the walls as I walked past reception. The stunned silence, the calculated stares, the half-sentences waiting to be spoken in private corners and encrypted group chats. The truth was already doing its job. By the time I reached my office, my inbox had turned into a digital confession booth. Anonymous tips, apologies, screenshots. But one email stopped me cold. It was from a junior attorney, Megan Kessler. She'd been a silent shadow at most legal meetings, always scribbling notes, rarely speaking. Subject, FYI leaked doc, Larkhill proposal. Attached was a PDF titled, Preliminary Terms, Acquisition of D&A Systems by Larkhill Tech Group. I scanned the first few lines. Pending resolution of internal ownership disputes. Timeline assumes IP control fully transfers within 30 days. The signature at the bottom? Celeste Winters. No mention of the board, no CC to legal, and definitely no trace of me. So that's what all this was about. Not just ego, not just image. She wasn't trying to lead DNA. She was trying to sell it. Fast, quiet, and clean. And I was the final signature standing in the way. I closed the document, exhaled slowly, then pressed record on my private audio journal. She wanted me out of the picture because I was the paperwork. I said softly. The inconvenient truth in every clause. I didn't feel rage, just a kind of precision. At 11:03 a.m., I requested a private meeting with Celeste and Dorian. No board, no staff, no lawyers. Just us. They arrived 5 minutes late. Celeste's heels clicked like gunshots across the floor. Dorian's smile was tight and rehearsed. Make it quick, Celeste said, dropping into the chair across from me. Don't worry, I replied, sliding a folder toward her. This won't take long. Inside were 3 documents. A formal withdrawal letter from Zilix Tech, citing loss of executive trust. A contract termination from Core Grid Analytics. Failure to uphold licensing transparency. A spreadsheet listing 27 employees, engineers, designers, ops staff, who had already signed contracts with Innovate Solutions, effective next Monday. She glanced at Dorian. He looked away. "Here's how this ends," I said calmly. "You resign within 24 hours. You walk out with your head up, your exit polished, your resume spotless." Celeste blinked. "You're bluffing." I didn't move. "You'd like to think that." Dorian leaned forward. "Aurelia, be reasonable. This isn't good for anyone." I turned to him. "You knew she was courting a buyout without informing the board. You didn't stop her. That makes you complicit, not neutral." His face darkened. Celeste snapped. "You'd sabotage your own legacy just to spite me?" I shook my head. "I didn't sabotage anything. You did. I'm just cutting the wires before your bomb goes off in everyone's face." She stood. "You can't force this." I stood too. "I don't have to. Larkhill already pulled out. Their legal team caught wind of the clause breaches this morning. You tried to sell a house you didn't own." Silence again, but this one was heavier, deeper, not just corporate, personal. "You wanted power," I added. "Now you have a choice. You can walk today, quietly, or you can stay and watch what scorched earth looks like with your name on it." Celeste said nothing. I reached into my folder and pulled out one more document. "Your severance. It's fair. It's clean. And the reference letter? Already written. It paints you as strategic, innovative, and visionary." Dorian looked stunned. "Why?" he asked. "Because I'm not like her," I said, "and because I'm tired of fighting." Celeste stared at the paper, then slowly took the pen. No words, no glares, just a signature. When she was done, she pushed it back, gathered her things, and left without saying goodbye. I didn't watch her walk out. I sat down, turned to my screen, and started drafting the announcement. Leadership Update D&A Systems. The words came easy. She took the corner office, I took the company. The announcement hit inboxes by 6 a.m. I didn't reread it. I didn't need to. I'd lived every syllable. And still, when I stepped into the office that morning, the silence nearly knocked the breath out of me. The kind of quiet that didn't come from absence, but from aftermath. People nodded at me with cautious politeness. Some offered soft smiles. A few avoided eye contact altogether. It wasn't celebration. It was awareness. Reverence, maybe. Or relief. Celeste's nameplate was already gone from the door. No speech, no farewell cake, no framed photo with a fake quote printed on canvas. Just gone. I stood outside the glass-walled office, staring at the new placard someone had posted. Aurelia Winters, CEO. No exclamation mark, no tagline, just black text on brushed steel. I closed the door behind me and sank into the chair. Same chair I'd sat in 1,000 times as CTO. Same view, same desk. But it felt heavier now, like stepping into a house that used to be yours, only to find someone had moved all the furniture an inch to the left. On the corner of the desk sat the small wrapped box I had left at the gala, the photo album. I hadn't opened it. Not then. Not when I walked away from Dorian without waiting for him to unwrap it. Not when I cleared out the betrayal from the code base. But now, I finally peeled back the paper. Inside were snapshots, black and white grainy prints from the early years. Me in oversized glasses sitting on the floor with cables tangled around my feet. A whiteboard sketch with D&A V0, 1 written in Sharpie. A printed quote taped to the corner. "We start small. We stay sharp." My handwriting. And at the very back, a post-it, yellowed with time. For the ones they underestimated. Dad. I stared at that handwriting until my eyes blurred. There was no dramatic music, no standing ovation, just me, alone, holding the thing I'd almost given up to people who couldn't spell integrity without a lawyer. Dorian retired the next week. He sent a group email citing health, clarity, and quality time with family. We spoke briefly at Thanksgiving. He told me the turkey was dry. I told him it wasn't the bird's fault. Isolde dropped by once in December. She didn't mention Celeste, just commented on the office plants and brought me homemade peach cobbler. The kind she used to make when things were okay. We didn't talk about the company. We didn't talk about family, but she hugged me a little longer than usual before leaving. As for Celeste, she vanished like a glitch in a live demo. Word had it she took a job in San Jose. Something about a product strategist position. Mid-level, no press release, no public statement, and not a single message to me. I didn't expect one. Some wounds don't bleed. They just stay beneath the skin, waiting for pressure. But I wasn't bleeding anymore. I wasn't bitter either. I was rebuilding. And this time, I wasn't building for headlines. I launched a mentorship initiative, one-on-one coaching for women in back-end engineering, no media hype, no PR filter, just code, guidance, and growth. We branded the new platform, built by quiet hands, because that's what we were. Quiet, consistent, relentless. I didn't hold town halls or press junkets. I didn't need to. I led in the background, but not in the shadows, and slowly, very slowly, the company began to shift. Not with fanfare, but with trust. Engineers spoke up more, teams experimented faster, clients returned, not because of the name, but because they knew who stood behind the product again. And one night, late, long after the others had gone home, I found myself placing that old photo album on the shelf behind my desk. I didn't do it for nostalgia. I did it for closure. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't the same as forgetting. It was choosing not to carry the same weight twice. Celeste had called me useless, but I built an empire in the quiet, and I walked away with everything that mattered. Some victories come loud, others arrive in silence. Mine didn't need applause because peace was louder than any boardroom cheer. Looking back, if I could offer one truth, it's this: never confuse being quiet with being weak. For years, I kept my head down, thinking loyalty and hard work would speak for themselves. But in the real world, especially in business, silence can be mistaken for consent. I had to learn that protecting your worth doesn't make you difficult. It makes you honest. And family? It's complicated. Love doesn't always come with fairness. Sometimes the people closest to us betray us the hardest, not because they hate us, but because they never imagined we'd stand up and say enough. So here's what I want to leave you with. You are not too soft. You are not too late. You are not too much. You are exactly enough for the empire you're meant to build, the boundaries you're learning to draw, and the future you still get to shape. Maybe your Celeste isn't a sister. Maybe it's a boss, a partner, a parent, or even that voice in your head. But whatever tries to rewrite your story, remember, you hold the pen. You set the terms. You can walk away whole. Now I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to take your power back, quietly or not? What would you have done differently if you were in my shoes? Or maybe you're still in your chapter 3, holding your breath and waiting for the right moment to rise. If so, let this be your sign. You're not alone. If this story touched you, drop a 1 in the comments or tell me where you're watching from. If it didn't hit the mark for you, let me know why. I'm listening. Whether you're in Seattle like me or tuning in from somewhere across the country, I'm grateful you're here. And if you want more stories like this, raw, real, and rooted in the things that matter, hit that subscribe button and join this growing community. Your voice matters here. Until next time, take care of your peace, because no title is worth your soul.